With steamed bun stuffers, cheese slicers, and saucy shotguns, some of your favorite foods are made in incredibly satisfying ways. So I hope you're hungry, because today we're checking out some food industry machines that are on another level. To start, allow me to state the obvious. Americans love French fries. The average American consumes 30 pounds of them a year. McDonald's alone sells 9 million pounds a day, and a third of all potatoes in the US end up as frozen fries. So they need to be produced on an industrial scale with machines that automatically sort potatoes before peeling them with high-pressured steam and slicing them into the perfect shape. I'd love to float away on that delicious golden river, but that's probably too many fries for me to handle. Luckily, there's some more personal fry-making machines out there too. The way that French fry cutter glides through potatoes is mesmerizing. But these suckers still need to be cooked. Back in the factory, there are machines that'll do that for you, automatically frying the fries, freezing them, and packaging them up. Large-scale plants like these can process upwards of 200,000 tons of potatoes per year. To put that into perspective, if the Statue of Liberty was made out of French fries, they could produce 7.5 in a year. I don't know how long the starchy statues would last, though, the way New Yorkers scarf down fast food. Speaking of New York favorites, it's pizza time. People have loved pizza since the 6th century BCE, when Persian soldiers would bake bread and cheese on their shields in the harsh sun. But nowadays, it's a bit more complicated. Mass-produced pizzas are typically made with several giant machines, and this production line at the Longview factory in Shanghai starts by depositing balls of dough onto a conveyor belt before smushing them into the right shape. Pretty satisfying. But some factories don't opt for the dough squashing method, and the machines produced by AMF Bakery Systems cut out their crusts from a big sheet of dough instead. This system can handle up to 13,200 pounds of dough an hour, which is a whole lot of pizza. And once you have hundreds of perfect pie beds, you need to add your sauce. Fortunately, AMF have developed the Trot Power Shot Depositor, a saucy shotgun that can apply it with pinpoint accuracy. That's awesome! And the cannon can paint 200 pizzas with delicious tomato sauce per minute. But of course, no pie is complete without cheese. This system by the Dutch company Raidmaker BV covers your pizza in a giant pile of cheese before removing the excess to ensure even coverage. With that, the pies are frozen and packaged for us to eat. But my Italian Nana would turn in her grave if she knew I was buying frozen pies. If only there was a way to shrink this entire pizza factory down so I could have freshly made pizza at home. This red wonder box is the Let's Pizza vending machine, and it can make you a pie in just 3 minutes at the push of a button. The machine makes the dough itself, and you can choose from 8 different pizzas with all your favorite toppings, completely made to order. It's a terrifyingly easy way to eat 2,000 calories of cheese and bread, and I think this fresh pizza machine would blow a hungry Persian's mind. But let's move on to some even faster fast food. Making gyozas and pierogies is usually a time-consuming process, but today you can rapidly produce these gooey meat dumplings at breakneck speed with a machine like the MAG 1030. This little machine is every dumpling lover's dream, as it lets you put any filling you want into its hopper before using it to automatically fold and form 1,500 gyozas per hour. 1,500 GPH seems unbelievably fast, but in the gyoza making world, that's nothing, as larger machines like Kogyo Tosai's A16NA can make 10,000 in a single hour. Kogyo Tosai claimed this is the first fully automated gyoza making machine, as the process doesn't require you to lift a single finger. The machine uses a precise air cutter to slice the dumpling dough into a circle like it's the last airbender. Then its robotic arms rapidly fill and form the dumplings, allowing you to hang out at the end of the production line, open your mouth, and wait. This footage is making me pretty hungry for dumplings, but I don't want to overdose on gyoza, so I need something a bit smaller. This cute little machine is the Wingfly Dumpling and Ravioli Maker, and it lets you create perfect gyozas at home with a single push. Of course, you do need to add the filling yourself, and it only makes 2 at a time. So if you're feeling extra lazy and extra hungry, then how about we upgrade to a larger steamed bun machine? These machines are able to smoothly make steamed buns with a cutter like a spaceship's airlock. Furthermore, as the dough is spun into shape, a tube runs down the middle that automatically pumps the flow of dough with any filling you choose. Personally, I think these things are dangerous. If I had a machine that automatically made steamed buns and gyozas, it'd ruin my life. So let's move on to something safer and enter the magical world of eggs. A number of the sauces, pastries, and desserts we eat contain this magical ingredient. But some recipes don't want you to use the entire thing, calling for just the yolk or the whites. Separating them by hand can be a real pain, but fortunately, there are egg processing machines that can do it for us on a massive scale. Dang, you know what they say about making omelets? Well, this is the OVO Tech RX-8, a machine that can break over 25,600 eggs per hour, providing the ingredients for 12,800 omelets. Once the eggs are cracked with a light metal spank, a pair of workers remove any yolks that have broken. Then the eggs are funneled into a chute with holes in the bottom, allowing the whites to fall into the bucket while the thicker yolks continue on down the machine. The system is very efficient, but believe it or not, this is just the tip of the eggberg. Sonovo is the largest supplier of egg equipment in the world, and their OptiBreaker Compact 6 is able to wash, break, and separate 66,600 eggs per hour. Take a look. Wow, this baby works in a similar way to the RX-8, but it can crack 533,800 eggs per 8-hour shift, which is 266,400 omelets. You're gonna need one heck of a frying pan to crack them though, and a whole lot of toppings. Personally, I like putting cheese on my omelets, so it's time to talk cheese slicers. Cheese wheels can be enormous, and a wheel of Parmesan can weigh as much as 85 pounds and boast an 18-inch diameter. So how do you go about cutting this beer keg-sized block? With lasers, of course. Okay, so the laser doesn't actually do the slicing, but this hypnotic ARPA ultrasonic cutter employs a laser scanning system to measure out precisely where it needs to cut the cheese. Then, once the enormous wheel is sliced bilaterally, smaller blades cut those halves into smaller pieces. Europeans take their cheese very seriously, so it's no surprise that they get giant laser-firing machines involved in the process. But what if you're a humble cheddar-eating American? Well, that's where the Textor TS500 comes in. Those slices look just like your mom, pretty fine. And the machine creates slices that are perfect for a burger or grilled cheese. But we can get even finer. Top shredders press blocks of cheese into rapidly spinning blades, turning them into confetti in a matter of seconds. Dang, I gotta get me one of those. It looks perfect for shredding cheese and incriminating documents. And if the IRS is watching this, that was a joke. Please don't investigate my food waste. From Ross and Rachel to me and your mom, everybody loves a power couple. And cheese's soulmate is undeniably tomatoes. The USA grows over 2.7 billion pounds of the fruit per year, and that only accounts for 40% of the tomatoes sold in stores, as the majority are imported from other countries. Some of these are red balls of joy, go into salads and sandwiches, but a lot of them are also turned into paste to be used in sauces, which is a satisfying process. After harvest, these tomatoes are stored for 24 hours in a pool full of water in a process known as wet storage. They're then transported wetly via a hydraulic conveying ditch, which is a waterway just for moving tomatoes. How whimsical. Swimming in that big red lazy river looks pretty relaxing. But you'll want to hop out quick because when the tomatoes arrive at the factory, they're pulped into a fine puree. Then they're heated up until the water evaporates and leaves behind a thick, concentrated paste, which is ready for you to add to your sauces. Roughly 172 million Americans use tomato paste, so these waterways do important work, and I'm considering getting one installed that leads to my desk. I'm sure my pet fish would appreciate the extra room. But lots of people aren't fans of tomatoes, so let's move on to another fruit that's harvested in an incredible way. In 2018, the USA alone produced 4.4 billion pounds of watermelons, 1.6 billion pounds of cantaloupe, and 517 million pounds of honeydew. But moving all those melons ain't easy, which is where machines like the Argil's AFH T4 come in. This behemoth is 57 feet wide and boasts a surprisingly meaty 35 horsepower engine. While it doesn't actually pick the fruit up itself, its conveyor belt of buckets allows the pickers to move 90 melons per minute to a transport truck. Considering melons can weigh upwards of 7.9 pounds, that's potentially over 700 pounds of melon mobility a minute. If I set one up leading to my desk, do you think it'd interfere with my tomato waterway? Nah, we can let the Be Amazed engineers figure that one out. Once you've picked your fruit, you need to prepare it, and if you're anything like me, you love the sweet taste of apples, but hate the bitter, waxy skin. Blech. Luckily for us, in the modern era, we don't even have to eat skin ever again, thanks to the Cronin AS6. This machine is able to peel, core, and slice up to 900 apples per hour. So if it were operating for 8 hours, it'd prepare enough apples to keep the doctor away for nearly 20 years. But let's say I need even more apples peeled. Well, I might turn to Atlas Pacific Engineering, a company whose assembly line is like the ninth circle of hell for all apple kind. This assembly line is the whole kit and caboodle, automatically washing, coring, peeling, slicing, and sorting up to 130 apples per minute. That makes the mechanism over 8.5 times faster than the AS6, able to prepare 7,800 apples per hour or 187,200 a day. That's enough for 37,440 of us to have our 5 a day, so I think it's safe for us to move on to something a bit less healthy. When I was a kid, I remember blending up a bunch of chocolate and milk, freezing it, and hoping I'd get an ice cream bar. But unfortunately, making these sweet treats is way more difficult than it seems. Unless you have a machine like the Iglo 18,000. This machine continuously pours ice cream out of a tube while a wire cuts it into the right shape and a mechanism fires a popsicle stick into the mix. Then the ice cream gets their shell when the Iglo dunks them into a delicious chocolatey coating and packages them up. The Iglo can produce around 9,000 ice creams per hour, or 150 a minute. So a couple of hours with the machine is enough for a lifetime supply, assuming you have a big enough freezer to store them. But if your sweet tooth still isn't satisfied, then let's head back to Europe and check out everyone's favorite French dessert, crepes. Wow, it's like a beautiful crepey merry-go-round. This device is the Huayi Gin's automatic pancake machine, and it uses a spinning arm to spread batter across a hot surface, which is then fried as the whole machine rotates like a clock. The temperature is finely tuned, so by the time the crepe goes all the way around and arrives back at the cook, it's perfectly cooked. The machine doesn't look that speedy, but these bad boys can pump out 540 crepes per hour, which should be enough to satisfy anyone's cravings. Furthermore, once you're full, it makes a pretty fun carnival ride too. Just make sure you turn the heat off first. Some of you might prefer French toast to crepes, but before we cook some up for breakfast, we need to get our bread. There's evidence that humans have been making bread for over 30,000 years, and today the average American eats an estimated 50 to 60 loaves every year. Thankfully, our friends at AMF Bakery Systems are keeping up with this demand because their high-speed bread system can produce up to 13,500 loaves per hour. To start with, the dough is created in an open-frame mixer before being transported on conveyor belts and divided into little bundles. These dough balls are then coated in flour before being transported to the molding station where they're squashed and rolled into a tube shape. This dough then rises to form into perfect loaves, and finally the bread is ready to be baked in mass, packaged, and loaded into pallets. Pretty crazy, huh? In just one magical building, dough is transformed from a gooey mess into delicious bread, ready for the market. But imagine how much harder transporting that bread around the world would be if the loaves had legs and beaks. This is a reality in the world of chicken farming, and when farmers need to transport and control thousands of birds, they use special machinery to get the job done. A chicken loader might sound like the name of a new sandwich from KFC, but it's actually a vehicle that can move a load of chickens. This Apollo Generation 2 machine by CMC Industries can move up to 12,000 chickens per hour by scooping them up onto a giant conveyor belt. Other chicken loaders like Peer Systems Catching Machine operate in a slightly different way by using large spinning brushes to suck the chickens into the machine. The system catches 9,000 chickens per hour, and according to the manufacturer, these machines don't irritate the birds. Honestly, it even looks kind of fun. Now, for completely unrelated reasons, let's take a look at this machine that sorts bones. Yum. Anyone hungry? Believe it or not, this machine isn't a trap from Saw. It's a commercial separator that crushes up an entire carcass before pushing the meat and bone mix through a filter at high pressure. This pushes the soft edible meat through the filter, which separates it from the bones with less than 5% wastage. The largest versions, made by POS Design Limited, can produce up to 50,000 pounds of meat per hour, which is around 8,800 chickens. Seeing it in action is making me feel bad about my nuggies, and it's never nice seeing how the sausage gets made. And speaking of, let's see how the sausage gets made. Fair warning though, this expression exists for a reason, and if you ever want to enjoy sausages again, you might want to look away. Hot dog, that's disgusting. Sausage making machines automatically extrude ground up meat into thin edible casings that are typically made from animal intestines. The sausage squeezers are incredibly efficient as the machine automatically twists the casings at pre-programmed intervals to make the individual links. Larger scale machines are able to make up to 120 sausages per minute, which is more than even the hungriest dog could scarf down. And as one final treat before we move on, here's that process in slow motion, with some added sound effects for artistic license. You're welcome. Still, if you think the wieners are gross, take a look at the meat that's being loaded into them. Nasty. This is pork that's been processed in a meat separator, but sausages can be made out of almost anything, including chicken, beef, and snake. Wait, what? Yep. While that may sound like a joke, in Vietnam and Thailand, snakes have been farmed for their meat for years. In fact, in 2024, a study found that python farming was a remarkably efficient source of meat, as it's very high in protein and the snakes reach their full weight just 1 year after hatching. In Vietnam's Dong Thap province, they use this meat to make sausages. But this creepy cuisine isn't just limited to Asia, and in America, some restaurants and hot dog companies have offered rattlesnake sausages for years. If that wasn't freaky enough, in Japan, you can get your hands on fish sausages called gyaniku, showing that wieners really are one of the most versatile foods out there. But if you want to eat fish, you need to prepare it first, and some species are so big that they require some pretty heavy-duty equipment. Sorry, Nemo. This butcher is carving up an Atlantic bluefin tuna with a bandsaw, a tool that's used for lumbering metalwork and sometimes cutting fish. You might be wondering why such a beastly implement is used here. Well, the bluefin tuna, which is a popular component of sushi and sashimi, can measure up to 13 feet long and weigh upwards of 2,000 pounds. Furthermore, it's often frozen after it's caught, so you can see why a steak knife wouldn't exactly cut it. Literally. Personally, seeing clips of machines like this make me nauseous and very conscious of my fingers. One slip up could easily cost you a digit, which is why I'd rather use an automatic machine like the Mainali RB1. The RB1 can be programmed to move the fish around into the path of a bandsaw blade, keeping your fingers far away from the cutting edge. But other systems are even more advanced, and Marl's iCut 130 portion cutter uses laser scanners to measure the fish before it's sliced. This machine is like a fully automatic sushi chef, as the lasers ensure each piece of salmon is sliced perfectly. But it isn't the only machine that carves up fish with pinpoint accuracy. The Merrill D-Header is a machine that's specifically designed to cut fish's heads off, as it uses a spinning saw to process up to 25 per minute. The machine uses a camera to sense exactly where the fish's head is, ensuring each cut is perfect while keeping the worker's hands well away from the machines. That's definitely for the best. I'd hate to find a finger in my fish pie. Blech! Let's move on. Those fish slicers feel a little barbaric, so let's move on to something that's truly futuristic. Lab-grown meat. The technical term for this product is cultivated meat, and scientists estimate that if we can start producing it at scale, it could reduce the beef industry's CO2 emissions by 92% and save millions of cows from the slaughterhouse. But how are these Frankenburgers created? Well, scientists begin by extracting a living animal's stem cells, which are essentially blank cells found in all living organisms that can turn into any cell when needed. For example, if you injure your arm, your stem cells will turn into muscle cells to heal the broken tissue. In cultivated meat production, these animal stem cells are placed inside an incubator that provides them with nutrients and oxygen, which molds them into fat or muscle cells. Then these cells are bioprinted into cuts of meat, which is essentially a fancy form of 3D printing, except it uses animal cells to print delicious burgers. Man, we really are living in the future. But we need a side for our burger, so how about another futuristic superfood? If you see a dirty pond or fish tank, it probably doesn't spark your appetite. But some types of algae are edible, and they're rich in an antioxidant called astaxanthin, which has anti-inflammatory and anti-diabetic properties. Additionally, a diet high in antioxidants has been shown to prevent heart disease and certain types of cancer. So lots of food companies have started using the superfood in sushi, salads, and baked goods, prompting manufacturers to start producing the ingredient on an industrial scale. The old school method of algae farming, or alga culture, involves filling shallow open-air ponds with water containing microscopic algae spores. Then sunlight, minerals in the water, and carbon dioxide in the air causes the algae to multiply until it's a thick green paste. However, algae can now be farmed in higher tech ways, and the newest innovation involves these large bags or tubes called photobioreactors. The bags and tubes act as incubators, which are filled with water containing microscopic algae. Then the temperature and CO2 levels in the incubators are carefully optimized so the algae grows at an accelerated rate. Some of these systems are pretty high tech. The PBR 1250L hatchery by Industrial Plankton Inc. looks like a spaceship, but it's actually an algae system that's able to automate the cleaning process by sanitizing itself with UV light before production. This makes the process much easier and faster than open-air algae farming, and frankly, those neon green tubes look a lot more appetizing than a shallow pond filled with thick green sludge. In fact, I think I just lost my appetite. Moving on to another pile of gloop now. Mussels. When you open these little critters up, they look like aliens that you should keep far away from the dinner table. But these ugly things are actually mollusks that are closely related to clams, oysters, and scallops. And like their tasty cousins, they're eaten all over the world. As a result, mussel farming is big business, and it usually involves ropes being suspended under the ocean for juvenile mussels in the area to cling on to. Once attached, the mussels will happily stay on the ropes until they grow to adulthood, when they're harvested, steamed, and served up with a side of fries. Mussel farms worldwide produce around 15 million tons of mussels per year. But before these millions of mollusks can be eaten, they all need to be individually washed. And I don't mean by hand. This mussel washer by the shellfish farming company Mulot uses a rotating drum and a giant brush to scrub thousands of mussels clean before spitting them out the other side. It looks slightly less relaxing than my morning shower, and now that the mollusks are squeaky clean, they need to be separated and processed on a shellfish sorting line. Finally, the mussels are deposited into giant mesh sacks of shellfish that are then hauled off to restaurants, where the freaky-looking creatures are turned into delicious bowls of seafood. But of course, I know some of you are fussy eaters and find the very idea of eating seafood gross. So how about we check out something that everyone eats? A good old-fashioned sandwich. Pickles, mustard, lettuce, and ham between two hunks of bread? That's basically the most pure human food I can imagine. Of course, the central pillar is the ham, and it's gotta come from somewhere. So let's take a look at some meat-making components. This is the multi-vac line solution for cold cuts like sliced ham and sausage. This baby is designed to be able to switch between different meat products seamlessly and can load upwards of 110 portions of delicious meat every minute. The slicing, sorting, and packaging can all be accomplished on a single conveyor belt, which does wonders for both space efficiency and the ease of which meat can be loaded and unloaded from the machine. The robotic arms here are crazy. Watch how they scan for the meat and grab it. Of course, those pink blobs of ham are so processed, I'm not sure they technically count as real meat. But fortunately, there are more stylish machines that'll allow you to slice up your prime cuts too. Instead of rapidly cutting through 100 chunks of meat per minute, the Burkel Flywheel Slicer is a classy piece of equipment that's designed for butchers and delicatessens. It holds large, expensive cuts of meat in place and allows you to carve through them with a rotating 12-inch blade. The shape of the blade mimics a hand holding a knife, so you can rapidly cut your prosciutto into natural-looking slices without putting your fingers in harm's way. Unlike larger industrial machines, you can actually buy one of these bad boys yourself and put it in your kitchen. But this specific model retails for around $9,000, and for that price, I'd rather cut my meat with a knife and risk losing a couple of fingers. Prosciutto is an important part of Italian cuisine, but it isn't the most important. Yep, it's time to move on to the undisputed heavy-carb champion of the Italian dinner table, pasta. Allow me to introduce the Monfarina Sous Chef Pasta Extruder, which can be easily assembled and disassembled for last-minute pasta making. The machine even comes with multiple attachments and settings for making different noodles. Here it is making ravioli, which is, while delicious, a pain in the butt to make traditionally. Wow! Hit the road, Nona! Of course, these comparatively little machines have nothing on industrial-level pasta makers. Check this out. My God, that's a veritable waterfall of pasta. A pasta fall, if you will. This machine comes courtesy of the Hiwant Group, and if you think watching the pasta fall is majestic at torrential speed, check it out at a slower pace. It's like a beautiful hanging garden of pasta. It does make me a little nervous about standing under that thing. I've often dreamt about being buried in pasta, but now that it's a potential reality, I'm a little scared. Of course, as we all know, there's more than one kind of noodle in this crazy world and more than one kind of way to make them. Take instant noodles, for instance. They're quick for us to cook and even quicker for me to eat. But the process to make them is longer than you might think. Let's take a look. Instant noodle lines like this one by Kaustav Engineering work via a vacuum conveyor. This moves the flour to a mixer where it's converted to dough, which moves on a belt across the rest of the machine. They're then cut into the perfect shape and compacted together into a perfect dry brick. A machine like this is capable of packaging 30,000 bags of instant noodles an hour. I'm no civil engineer, but I have to ask, if we can make this stuff so fast, why aren't we building our roads and bridges out of the stuff? Let's move on. I'm starting to find the sight of these weird, wet noodle bricks oddly satisfying, and I don't want to dwell on that feeling. Everybody loves pies, whether they're stuffed with delicious baked apples, soft emulsified pumpkins, or even steak and ale if you're a Brit. There's something undeniably warm and appealing about them. Let's take a peek at how they're mass-produced. Okay, watching that filling get squirted out is a little less appealing than I thought. These machines cut and measure the dough before excreting the filling into the pie to be. After that, more dough is gently plopped on top, creating the beautiful pie hat we all know and love. Dang, those pie toppers really do go a long way to making the product more appealing, don't they? I gotta say, compared to some of the other processes we've seen today, this doesn't actually seem half bad. Or should I say half-baked. Man, what a feast for the eyes. Which one of these incredible machines did you find the most satisfying? Let me know in the comments below, and thanks for watching.